MV Joyita was a 69-foot wooden ship built in 1931 for Hollywood movie director Roland West as a luxury yacht. It was named after West's wife, actress Jewel Carmen, Joyita being the Spanish word for Little Jewel. In October 1941, the United States Navy acquired the Joyita and outfitted her as YP-108, a yard patrol boat at Pearl Harbor Naval Base in Hawaii. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, she would patrol the Big Island of Hawaii until the end of World War II. In 1943, Joyita was heavily damaged after running aground. Badly in need of ships, the Navy repaired the vessel, where it also received a number of upgrades. After the war, the ship was made surplus and sold to a firm known as the Lewis Brothers. Cork lining was added to the ship's hull, making the ship extremely buoyant and near unsinkable. The vessel was bought and sold several times over the next few years. It was purchased and chartered to Captain Thomas "Dusty" Miller, a British-born sailor living in Samoa. Miller used the ship as a trading and fishing charter boat. On October 3, 1955, Joyita left Apia Harbour in Samoa, destined for the Tokelau Islands. The 270-mile voyage was expected to take 2 days, with the ship due to arrive on October 5. Engine trouble had already delayed the Joyita's departure by a day. Unable to repair one of the faulty dual engines, the Joyita left Apia Harbour on just one. On board were 16 crew members and 9 passengers, including a government official, doctor, businessman, and 2 children. Her cargo consisted of medical supplies, timber, 80 empty 45-gallon oil drums, and various foodstuffs. On October 6, the Joyita was reported as being overdue. No nearby ships had reported receiving a distress signal. Over the next few days, a search and rescue mission was launched covering an estimated 100,000 square miles of ocean. But there was no trace of the Joyita or those on board. Weeks passed. On November 10th, the Joyita was spotted by a passing ship. She was adrift hundreds of miles from her planned route, north of Vanuatu. Partially submerged, the ship was listing heavily, and there was no trace of anyone on board. The 4 tons of cargo were also missing, and the radio was found tuned to the International Marine Distress Channel. Further investigation of the Joyita also revealed the following items of note. There was barnacle growth high above the ship's port side waterline, meaning the Joyita had been listing for a long time. The ship had been damaged. The flying bridge had been smashed away and the deckhouse was lightly damaged. A canvas awning had been rigged behind the bridge, on top of the deckhouse. All 3 of Joyita's life rafts were missing. The starboard engine was found covered by mattresses. The port engine's clutch was still disassembled, showing the vessel was only running on one engine. An auxiliary pump had been rigged in the engine room, mounted on a plank of wood slung between the main engines. However, it had not been connected. The radio was tuned to the International Distress Channel, but there was a break in the cable between the set and the aerial, limiting its range to about 2 miles. The electric clocks, wired into the vessel's generator, stopped at 10:25. Switches for the cabin lighting and navigation lights were on, suggesting whatever occurred happened at night. The ship's logbook, sextant, other navigational equipment, and the firearms Miller kept in the boat were missing. Rescuers also found a doctor's bag on deck, along with blood-stained bandages. There was still fuel in Joyita's tanks, and it was calculated she had traveled almost 243 miles before being abandoned. When the Joyita was found, her bilges and lower decks were flooded, but her hull was sound. Once the water was pumped out, she floated stably and was easily towed to Suva. When moored, investigators found that a pipe in the port auxiliary engine's cooling system had failed from corrosion, allowing water in. This leak would have only been detected when the water rose above the engine room floorboards, and by then, the leak would have been nearly impossible to find. Also, the bilge pumps had become clogged with debris, which would have made it very difficult to pump out the water. A formal inquiry into the fate of Joyita was held in February 1956. It found the vessel was in a poor state of repair, but that the fate of the passengers and crew was inexplicable on the evidence submitted. All 3 life rafts were missing, but abandoning the ship made no sense. With her cork lining, she was virtually unsinkable. The inquiry also established the reasons for the ship's flooding, finding the fractured cooling pipe and blocked bilge pumps. The water would have gradually flooded the lower decks, and as the boat sunk lower into the water, the remaining engine would not have been able to maintain enough speed to steer. The inquiry also placed responsibility for the events on Captain Miller, finding him to be reckless for setting out on a voyage with only one engine and several minor faults. He also broke maritime law by allowing Joyita's passenger license to lapse. Several theories have been proposed to explain what happened aboard the Joyita. Those surrounding Captain Miller point out he would have been well aware of the Joyita's ability to stay afloat. Since the ship was abandoned, many believe Miller had died or became incapacitated. Without his knowledge and reassurance, panic would have ensued when the ship began to flood, leading to abandonment via the life rafts. The blood-stained bandages do support the idea someone was injured. However, this situation would not explain the missing cargo. A friend of Captain Miller was convinced that Miller wouldn't leave Joyita alive given his knowledge. He was also aware of the tension between Miller and first mate Chuck Simpson, suggesting if the men came to blows and fell overboard or were severely injured, the vessel would be without experienced seamen, leading to panic when the ship began to flood. Miller was found to be in serious debt, which has caused many to believe these events had something to do with insurance fraud. However, the ship did not appear to be in the process of being purposely flooded, and in the state it was found, scuttling would have been nearly impossible. Kidnapping theories also gained traction. The Fiji Times wrote that sources reported the Joyita had passed through a fleet of Japanese fishing boats and saw something they weren't supposed to see. London's Daily Telegraph theorized that still active Japanese forces from World War II were involved. Knives made in Japan were found aboard, giving these theories life. Involvement with a Soviet sub was also put forward. Cold War politics and anti-Japanese sentiment in the region following World War II make these theories suspect. But some sort of confrontation could explain the damage to the ship, along with the missing passengers and cargo. Following the incident, the MV Joyita endured other misfortunes, earning it the reputation of an unlucky ship. It was eventually abandoned and fell into disrepair and disintegration. No traces of the 25 aboard on that fateful October were ever found, and they remain missing. The mystery of the MV Joyita remains unsolved,